what do you bring to the Mayoralty that's unique to you?
Well, that's a really good question. It's hard to talk from one's own perspective. I think I bring a lot of energy. It's really been a big part of my last 3 years, has been making sure I get out amongst all of our communities. I remember when I first campaigned here 3 years ago, and I was in Cromwell getting some work done, and a lady said to me, the Mayoralty and that it's just Alexandra stuff, which really astounded me that people in Cromwell didn't feel that involved. I've also taken a lot of effort to spend time in Ranfurly, Roxburgh, all around the district. So it's that energy and the willingness to put in the 12-hour days that are occasionally needed or more to get the job done.
Over the coming term, what do you think will be 3 of the big issues that Cromwell will be facing or dealing with?
Yeah, look, absolutely, it's the growth. So it kind of spreads into 2 places. One is the housing affordability and availability. And those are 2 quite distinct and separate things that may have the one solution. At the moment, we're living in a low wage economy. So Central Otago's average wage is 50,000 a year. New Zealand's is 60,000 a year. And yet we have some really, really high house prices. In fact, they're all high. So that means that for young ones to get a start, for your average working person to have a hope, they're really not, and that really distresses me because it means that there's people living in caravans at the moment in winter, people who are having to leave jobs and leave the area because they can't find somewhere to live. You wind up with an unbalanced society, and it doesn't matter whether you fly a bit on your left wing and you want to see everybody have a chance, or you fly on your right wing. You're not going to get staff for your businesses. Affordability of housing is a big one. The availability is a really big one too, because if you lose your house, your landlord decides to sell it, or decides to move in themselves or whatever, and you lose your flat and your house, really hard to find another one at short notice and at an affordable price. And that all comes back to growth, which is the 3rd issue that we're going to have to handle, and have made a really, really good start in handling with the Cromwell Community Board, supported by the Council with the master plan process, which has given the Cromwell community an unequalled opportunity to say, we know we've got growth coming, we're feeling the pressures of it now, here's how we want to handle that growth. That's now being transported into a spatial plan, which will move to the district plan, which will enable better growth patterns to emerge rather than ad hoc with what we've got now.
Well, Mearton, you've totally stolen my thunder, but tell me a little bit more about housing availability and affordability in Cromwell and across the region, and should council get involved, and what can it do?
Yeah, okay. So I moved here to Cromwell 25 years ago as a solo dad. I had 2 kids, both preschoolers. I was on the DPB back in the day. I'm not even coming here now. I then spent 8 years raising the kids on my own, managed to buy a house on one income. Again, that's not happening. So I'm looking at my own story and thinking the person who's your mayor now wouldn't even get a foothold in the ground in Central Otago, and that really worries me. So the affordability and the availability, as I've said, that's the crux. Excuse the pun. So what can be done? Can council do something? Absolutely we can. So in the last term I set up the Central Otago Affordable Housing Trust, and it's closely modelled and closely aligned with the Queenstown Lakes Affordable Housing Trust. It's ready to go with some really good ideas. One of them is what's called the secure homes model, which I think the boards and the council need to look very closely at. How that operates is that the land under the house stays in the trust ownership. The house itself is purchased by the family or the person. That's a sort of 3-bedroom house in Queenstown getting built for $340,000, $350,000. You go into that when it comes time for you to go, and sometimes the idea is that people stay in it as long as they need to raise their family, get the mortgage down and so forth, but sometimes work issues, health issues, marriage breakups or whatever lead people to need to leave. When that happens, they get the CPI back, not the capital gains. It means that they're not getting all those extra steps up the ladder, but it's the availability and the surety of the housing, that they know the roof's over their head the whole way. But it also means that that house remains in the affordable housing stock, so that the community is not losing the land that it's given once the first person's gone. It stays there forever under the Affordable Housing Trust, or indeed under the council if the council decides to operate it that way. I think that's going to offer some solutions, and we need to have a really strong look at whether or not to support that. For me, anything we can do at a council that's going to empower particularly young families to get a start here and to be able to stay here, we've got a responsibility to do.
I'm aware that at the last council meeting, a group of Central Otago young people addressed councillors with their concerns for the future, especially in regards to the environment.
Yep.
our council, what's their track record like on issues of sustainability, and what can it do better?
Yeah, okay. So it's the broad, they came and talked to us, and we've got at the moment the climate crisis debate, and climate emergency, and that's coming up at the next council meeting, whether or not we're going to declare a climate emergency, but actually we've got an ecological emergency. So we've done some really good things at the council of late. The Cromwell wastewater plant, that's putting 1,000 times better discharge out from it than it was prior, and it just won an award for that. So that's a real tick in the box. We're getting Clyde off septic tanks. Now those septic tanks all sitting next to the Mayoral Clutha are a real environmental hazard. So that's the biggest environmental project this council will probably ever do in the district. On the bad side though, and we've got some real issues with our waste. So we've gone from 774 kilos per rateable property 3 years ago to 884 last year, and we're still going up. That is heartbreaking, the amount of waste that we're pouring out. A part of that increase is our glass. So at the moment, I hate to say this, but our glass is going to landfill. And I've had people criticise the council for that. But the reason it's going to landfill is so many of our people are putting rubbish in the blue bins. How bloody hard is it? Glass means glass, but we're getting cardboard, we're getting bottle tops, we're getting cigarette butts, and we can't recycle it. The contract is gone, it's too contaminated, we can't use it. So that frustrates the hell out of me, because as a council, what can we do if the people, and it's only a small percent, it only takes 5% waste before your glass can't be recycled. We're also going to have to look at some solutions to our plastic waste. It used to be almost out of sight, out of mind, and the whole country was guilty of that. China's stopped taking it now. The pressure's coming back on us, so we're looking at primarily one of our main contractors to go, okay, how can we use this waste in order to recycle, use it in road chips or whatever we can find to make a use for it. But for me, it really comes back to basic principles, and that's don't make the stuff in the first place. And I look at our throwaway coffee cups. I refuse to call them takeaways. They're throwaways. As a country, we use 300 million of those a year. It's disgraceful. So it's pretty easy to get either sit and have your coffee, or if you've got to keep moving, get the reusable cups. They're pretty simple. But how does council make people do that? Well, we can't, but God, I wish they would.
You don't live in Cromwell, Tim. How do you work as mayor, and you touched on this before, to best serve this rapidly growing town?
Yeah, look, it's a matter of being here, and there's never a week goes past that I'm not at Cromwell. I make it to virtually every Cromwell business breakfast. I have my coffees and chats, and I just come up and hang out because it is our biggest town now. There's no question about that, and so it's incumbent upon me to be here. My main office is in Alexandra, but I'm here all the time. I've also got a son, and my 4-year-old grandson live in Cromwell, so it's precious to me, as is every part of Central Otago. But it is where the pressure is as well, and if you're not there, one thing I've learnt in this job is how much you don't know the other parts of the district you don't live in until you really spend some time there. And every area has its unique charms and its unique problems. And so I love coming up here and just hanging out, come to the farmers markets, sit in the cafes. People say I spend too much time in cafes, but oh well. Occasionally the pub, it's an important way of just getting to sit and talk to the people. I find my job, people won't necessarily come to me. So take the example of when I was here on the DPB. There was no way I was going knocking on the mayor's door. I was too busy trying to survive. So I've got to go and find those people. So it's also a matter of engaging with the likes of Reese at the youth. I was going to call it the hub, but it's not now. I've forgotten its new name.
Youth Trust.
Yeah. And talking with the police, the social services, and all those groups that are there in the parts of the community that aren't necessarily going to come and see me. But it's also talking to the developers, talking to the retailers, poking your nose in the shops and saying how's it going and so forth.